The NHL draft is tomorrow, and we are finishing off our prospect coverage today and tomorrow with two more profiles. Today, we are talking to Sam McGilligan of McKeen's Hockey, all about Jiri Kulich on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you all of the news, the stories, the trials, the tribulations, etc., about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day, every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also on YouTube. You're never going to have to get behind a paywall to listen to a Locked On product, and that is our guarantee. So today, like I said at the top of the show, we're talking to Sam McGilligan, a scout for McKeen's Hockey. We've had him on the show before. Very, very smart. Has lots of very smart things to say about prospects. And today we're talking about Jiri Kulich. So I'm just going to get right into it. So the draft just keeps getting closer and closer as of the time of airing this episode. I think it will be that week, next week. The draft is in like a week and a half. It's very, very soon. And so we've got our last couple of draft profiles before the big thing. And so I've got Sam McGilligan here of McKeen's Hockey to kind of come and talk a little bit about a couple of guys that I've kind of had an eye on, but haven't really had a chance to dig into in a lot of detail yet. How's it going, Sam?
Fantastic. How are you?
I am good. Like I talked about off mic, it's raining extremely hard, so I'm hoping that my microphone is not picking it up, but we'll see.
Not. It is not. As I learned this morning, I did a podcast with the Red Wings this morning as well. Restream is really good for cutting out background audio. So
that is good to know. So we might be safe from the thunderstorms. But let's talk about hockey players. I want to talk about Jiri Kulich, who is a name that I've been hearing all year and just haven't really dug into as a prospect because there's only so much time in the day, you know. And prospect is not my chief area of expertise, so unlike yourself. So what can you tell me about Jiri Kulich? What kind of player is he?
He's a Torts player, if there was to ever be one. Now, maybe not exactly a Torts player per se, but he's I like Scouch's phrase for these types of players, the meat and potatoes guys, the fundamentals guys. Kulich is high effort motor, really good shot. As the season progressed, got really good at finding and manipulating open space for said shot, which is kind of a big deal. He plays a really simplistic game that complements those around him, but does not drive the line. His U18s were the result of kind of like all of his progress through the year showing, just kind of coming together at the right moment. So, for context, he scored 9 goals in 6 games at the U18s, I believe, won MVP, which is just like crazy. That's a lot of goals, and very few of them were fluky. I mean, you can't like reliably score 9 goals in 6 games anywhere, pretty much. But he gets open really well. He reads the ice really well. He finds those little soft spots of ice, and then times the movement into him, and it's the timing of the movement that was kind of his problem earlier on. Like I always had the vibe that he was kind of hovering around the right areas, but there was just everything was off by just a small margin of inches or something. There were times where I would see him earlier in the season be open for a shot and then kind of like not adjust his body positioning enough to account for the pass coming in, and he just kind of like has to stretch out to catch it and doesn't get to shoot it, or he kind of doesn't realize that the pocket he's in is about a second or two too late and it's closed and he needs to have moved forward a bit. There was a process of, like, you could see the brain was trying to figure it out, but it just wasn't all there. And as the more and more season went on, it was just progress up, like next to no stagnations in that regard. He's not a dynamic playmaker, really. Like, I've seen individual passing plays and stuff that indicate that he's not incompetent. Like, he's a good passer in terms of, like, he's just solid. He's reliable. He won't force dumb passes through for the sake of forcing dumb passes. He won't overhandle the puck for the sake of overhandling the puck. He knows these aren't really his strengths and is more reliant on just getting the puck on his stick, finding the next play, whatever it is, whether most of them are the small connecting plays, kind of like the to a trailer behind him, or he will just be the link up guy, or just like a quick one touch pass over to someone else. Those parts of his game can be pretty effective. He gets the majority of his work done through there. And it doesn't sound like much, and it really isn't, but that's why Will calls these guys like meat and potatoes guys, because it doesn't matter. They're still efficient, right? Like, he's still getting tangible results that are really easy to project to the NHL. And this is all without mentioning the fact that he is easily one of the best defensive forwards in this draft, like one of the most defensively responsible forwards. This is that same survey the ice and know where to be at the right time off puck play, which is 90% of the job, because you don't get to touch the puck much anyways in a shift, right? You think about it, you only get like 5 seconds at that's a lot, because a normal shift's 45 seconds. There's 10 guys on the ice. This part of Kulich's game is why I think he's going to go really high in the draft. Well, maybe not really high. But relative to what people expect, like, I think he's going to end up going top 15 or 20. I can't remember where he was on Bob McKenzie's final list when it came out the other day.
I can't find out. He's
18th.
18th.
He's 18th. Okay, I looked at it literally before starting this and then immediately forgot, because I was trying to remember Minchikov, which I believe is 13. Is Minchikov 13?
I have this open somewhere. 12.
Close enough.
Which is appropriate for
yeah.
this. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later.
Absolutely.
But,
both of those guys, I think, have real possibility of going in the top 15. Jiri Kulich is the type of player that, like, Euro bias just does not exist for, because he plays that NA style of game that really doesn't, like, it benefits more on closer ice or on smaller ice if it can translate well. So everything for him works better when he's in close proximity with people. Like, some of his biggest strengths with the puck come from his ability to handle contact in general. Fundamentally, it's a little difficult to speak on sometimes, just because I'm not the dude out there throwing my weight against him, and I'm not speaking to him and understanding, like, his routine and his regimen for strength and conditioning. So it's hard to project, but overall, just based on, like, looking at the way he leverages himself and gains inside position, his skate angles as he's doing so, he gets in and he's able to shield the puck and protect it quite well, making him a possession asset at the very least. It may not turn into much. Like, he's not using this skill in the same way that, you know what, this isn't the right comparison, but I'm just going to use an extreme example because it's Columbus. Josh Anderson, that monster of a man, when he is just flying through the offensive zone and shrugging everybody off like they're nothing. He won't be doing that. That's not his game. But when faced with pressure and contact, he will be able to maintain possession and find the outlet, which is more important than a lot of people think, because you can't do that, then that's a 50-50 chance of a turnover at minimum, kind of, if you can't do that regularly every time you get pressured. And the NHL is nothing but pressure, and NHL coaches and GMs look at that and go, yeah, that's a big problem, man. I don't care about the other strengths. If I can't even trust this dude to handle pressure and not, like, cough the puck up every time. So that short passing game of his kind of works out well there. On the power play, this guy is just going to be firing shots. He's going to be the guy you want out there shooting the puck. He's not the most dynamic in terms of creation, which might stifle his use. Maybe that'll be just coach dependent and system dependent, but usually teams account for this when they're drafting them at the very least. Like, can you see him on the power play or not? I don't personally put that much weight into power play stuff, just because, like, I find that's an easy trap to fall into in terms of ignoring a bunch of 5v5 flaws for 2 minutes where the guy can score just because there's extra space. They all can, right? But
Yeah. In a minute, I've got more of my conversation with Sam about Kulich, but first, I've got to tell you about BetOnline, because BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. If you would like to put some money on who the Blue Jackets are going to draft on the first round tomorrow, then you can do that at betonline.net, I bet. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball. Football starts soon, so you can find futures for that. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting and wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcast, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device as betonline.net to learn more about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Blue Jackets your first listen every day. The NHL draft is right around the corner, and our team of local hosts and draft experts are breaking it down with insight and analysis for every first round pick. You can subscribe to Locked On Blue Jackets on YouTube for all the latest breakdowns on the NHL draft and more.
that's Kulich's read is kind of just one of the more simple ones you can find in the draft. Like, there's not much more to it than that. There are details within what I'm mentioning that are worth bringing up if you want to do like a full deep dive on the player. But if the whole point of this is to get like a fundamental understanding of what you'll be drafting if you draft him, that's it. Whether that's worth 13th pick for Columbus, I would personally say it's not, because while that is an extremely valuable player, and the range of which he's acceptable to be picked can start at like that range, like 13th, it won't be the worst pick in the draft. It won't even be close to it. Like, that's the thing with Kulich. Like, you can take him there and you're just like, we got a player most likely. And like, we got a player who, sometimes people hear like we got a player and fans are immediately disappointed, because we got a player doesn't always mean like we just got upside. Like, they just picture another random body in their bottom six. But when I say I mean like you got a good bottom six player, like the type of player that when he's in your bottom six and you're watching him, you're just like, well, I'm happy he's here. It's the other guys that need to go.
This has been such a weird, and I've talked about this with a couple of prospect guys. It's looking at like there's the top 5 consensus guys, I think is a group, and then I was looking and I was like, it could literally be one of 20 guys that go anywhere between 6 and 26, so like, yeah, this guy could go 12th overall, or he could go in the second round, and there's really no way of figuring out what's going to happen until you're on the night, which I think makes your job difficult. It also makes my job difficult, trying to figure out, could this guy be a Blue Jacket? Absolutely, but so could 20 other guys. So.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the huge problem. And actually, you could probably increase that range a little bit, knowing it's Columbus and knowing that you guys have no issue making a swing for a swing if you need one.
Jarmo Kekalainen likes the players that he likes, and he's not going to let anyone tell him otherwise.
Yep, and he's not going to let anyone else take him either.
I just did Yegor Chinakov's season review for his rookie season. Speaking of, players that Kekalainen was like, this is who I want, and we're taking him, and I will not accept any other players. So
I'll never forget my reaction to that, but that's like, sometimes we're just wrong, man. Sometimes we are just wrong looking at these guys, because I don't even really remember my Chinikov read too much. I hardly even watched him because I don't have the time to like go past like I want the players I watch to fully know them, like to understand them and get into the details. The more I add to the list, the less I can do for the back half of that list. Like, I'll always focus on like the top, whoever my top 2 rounds are will be looked into properly, which is why this year my list will be like just top 64 when it comes out. But yeah, Chinikov is the type of guy who slips by me because of that. But I honestly went back and saw some of his draft year stuff, and I'm amazed that he took the swing on that, because it was just like, I still wouldn't have, like, even if I had done a full detailed dive, I think my reaction would have been the same, and it just would have been wrong, because sometimes these guys have like that's the advantage teams have. Like, they can see, they're the ones, especially general manager. He is quite literally in charge of every aspect of this, from the scouting to the development to the coaching to the implementation, and the, like, all of it. He's in charge of. So they get so much additional information and resources to work with when making these picks. And if there are flaws within the player, you can interview them if it's a game sense thing and figure out their thing. If it works with what you're looking for and you are impressed, then that means you can, work with this stuff out with video sessions and game repetitions, etc. If it's mechanical issues, you talk to your development team and see what they can do. If there's certain weaknesses you don't like and strengths you do like, you see if you can, balance the strengths out to mitigate the weakness. This is all the stuff teams do that, like, us public scouts don't have an advantage on, that really do end up changing the draft board. And that's how Chinikov became a first rounder and became really good still, even though I do not think it was unreasonable to be low on him at the time. That's just how it works sometimes.
No, and he was an overager as well.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
this is
another
second
factor.
go round in the draft.
Never mind. I forgot. He was an overager. Never mind. I never would have even considered it, regardless of how detailed
I did so much research on Hendrix Lapierre, who went 22nd, because I was like, that's who Columbus is going to take. That's who they're going to take. And then they were like, no, we've drafted this guy that no one's ever heard of. And I'm like, cool. Thanks, Yarmo. But I want to talk a little bit more about Kulich, because I was looking just at his like base stats and immediately seeing like 14 points in 49 games for his Czech adult team this season. Like, that worries me. But I also remember I was talking to Scouting about I want to say it was Gleb Trikazov, who played a handful of KHL games this year and didn't get any points, but because he was playing like 45 seconds a game, he was having like 2 shifts. Is that the same kind of thing happening here, or is it just a case of bad luck?
Kulich definitely had a larger sample than the guys like Yurov and Gleb Trikazov did. The KHL specifically, like, because it's such a high level league, the kids, even if they're good enough to play, they don't play much. Like, they really don't play much. You need to be a world beater to get a ton of minutes in there, or just have a great fit with the most conditions. Players aren't going to really stand out or get a lot of reps. And this can sometimes exist for even the SHL and Liga, where like they're just kind of not getting the ice time required. A big part of it is just like, it's no matter what the pro hockey league is, it's difficult as a 17, 18-year-old to play in the pro hockey league. And when your game is built on physical contact and tiny margins of space, and most of, like, that's kind of like why Kulich's off puck scoring, I think, really took a step forward as the season progressed, because that was Kulich's primary tool that he could weaponize against these guys, because he was not as effective with his usual play style as he should have been. Because he was going up against, he would be 18, he'd have the right leverage on a guy, he'd have the right entry angle, and the other guy would be like, by the way, I'm 27, boom, and just like kind of manhandle him. And the other problem with these things is, like, these players may have the fundamentals to like play through contact. Like, that's what Jiri Kulich has. I think that he will be a plus player through contact in the NHL. I don't know how high of a ceiling it'll be, or I don't know if it's enough to build an entire game around, but luckily he's got, more than that. In terms of like off puck effort and just positioning and just smart short passing. But the major thing with Kulich is that when these guys are getting mauled by bigger players, the puck skill that they have really kind of diminishes, because they're not used to having force exerted on them that way. And it's an adjustment period to overcome the just, oh wow, that was a much more powerful like shove a much more powerful shove from that guy than I was expecting. And now I'm off balance, and now I don't have like, everything is just slightly off. And now these guys know this, right? Like, they're professionals. They've been playing. The 18-year-olds come in every year, and these guys have been just mauling them every single time. It's just a circle of hockey life. The older professionals know the younger ones are just going to be susceptible to certain amounts of physical play, and more than that, they know how the second they do it they built an advantage right there of Kulich. Let's say gets shoved by a bigger player, Kulich kind of just mishandles the puck a little bit. Now he knows he's mishandled the puck and he can just pounce on him, and they do. And then the rookie is just sitting there like, what the hell just happened?
In a minute, I have got more of my conversation with Sam about Kulich. It's coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets.
And then there's the second adjustment of just growing strong enough to withstand the contact. So there's the stronger players. Once they're used to it, even if they're weaker, they'll be able to recover faster. And this is something that was in Kulich's advantages of, like, you saw him get better as the season progressed in terms of just not folding under pressure, I guess is the better way of saying it, than just like beating it, because these bigger guys are just like, it's not so much size, it's just strength and experience and just playing 60-minute hockey games of this physicality. It's a big process, so it's mostly just getting used to it and then actually developing the strength to manage it, but that you won't be able to do in the span of a year. The strength part, it just comes from conditioning over years after development or after the draft, during,
and also like not being 18 years old, you know,
and that's
like,
just a huge part of it as well, right? Like,
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to say.
I was just going to say, I've talked to a handful of, prospect guys now. I've talked to a handful of prospects, and, like 18-year-olds are nowhere near done. Like, maybe not even growing tall. You see these guys that have grown 3 inches since their draft year, or they've put on, 20 pounds of muscle or whatever. And so it's always so weird that we're like, he's too small. And I'm like, he's 18, I think Kulich is what, 6 foot, 6'1"?
Something like that.
6 foot, 108
1.5
pounds. So, like, he's probably got some growing to do, but
he'll get stronger. He'll get bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
That parts of his, I don't think really anybody's overly concerned with that part of his game. Like, one thing with prospects in pro leagues a lot is how much their physicality gets exposed. Like, Noah Ostlund was a big example of this when he went up to J20 relative to Liam Ogren and Jonathan Lekkerimäki, because even though I think Ostlund's kind of the better player of the three, he was shut down the minute the door was closed on him. He had brilliance. I think he adapted way better than most people thought in terms of like second efforts and stuff, and like realizing what to do the second the contact was made. But it didn't matter because they were so much stronger than him and he was tiny. And physicality, people are concerned because physicality with him is a legit flaw right now. Like, it's not like, oh, he'll get stronger over the years. Like, right now it's a flaw. I'm still not really concerned, because I don't think you should be until like 20 years old, because of like you said, it takes years and they're not done yet. And some of these guys just haven't spent the time in the weight room and just, all of that type of stuff, right? But Kulich is not one of them. Kulich is one of the ones where you can look at him and be like, hey, well, he's going to be a contact player in the NHL. Like, that's definitely a thing. And now it's just about like getting him there. So he manages to turn, even though they both are susceptible to the same problems right now in their different leagues, he manages to turn that physicality into a strength because it's so projectable, because you can just kind of see how it works. And now that's what's going to make him a net front guy. That's what's going to make him really good on the forecheck, and he is going to be good on the forecheck. That is what's going to make him a solid defensive presence in those board battles. It's just going to make him annoying as hell at pretty much any time you have to go against him in the perimeter. May not be so beastly that he's just mauling guys left and right, but it's good enough to get the job done, because all that is with Kulich is just finding ways to get the job done. He doesn't have the highest level of puck skill. He doesn't have the highest passing knowledge. He's not the most deceptive or brilliant manipulator, dragging defenders way the hell out of their position just before like no look passing it in the slot. Who knows? Maybe he has this game. I mean, there's been crazier things happened. It's not like he doesn't have skill or any levels of this. It's mostly grades out as kind of like average. Like, it won't be a weakness in the NHL. It won't be a strength. He might pull off the occasional cool move there, like the random bottom six players do. You're like, wait, he can do that, and then he never does it again because he couldn't get himself in the right position to pull it off. But that's mostly Jiri Kulich. He's just simplicity refined, pretty much, and it makes him such a easy pick even as early as like 13. It's like you said, there are legitimately 20 players, and 20 players is my exact number between, sorry, let me give an exact thing here. Number 13, that is the Blue Jackets pick, correct?
12.
12?
12,
okay.
Not 13.
So 12 is the end of my third tier, and 13 is the beginning of my fourth, and it goes all the way to 23, and then the next one goes to 34. However, that's actually one gigantic tier goes from 13 to 34 that when I was looking at it all year, I was like, well, that's just not going to be a thing. So I'm going to find a way I'm going to find like the top half and the bottom half and divide it. But when I'm even going to I have a little thing already written up for the rankings when they come out, pretty much saying like these two tiers are so close that you could remove the tier separation and I'm be okay with it, because that's how this draft is going to be so open. And I have a feeling it's said the last few years that we're going to see a lot of chaos and reaches and the like, but I feel like, I don't know,
I'm anticipating
chaos.
It's gonna get weird. Like, let's do it. I'm all for it.
Exactly. I think the first like 12 picks outside of like maybe one will be almost exactly how people think. Maybe like give or take a spot or two, but like Juracek's going to go somewhere between like 4 and 8. Honestly, I wonder if he could just like dark horse his way up to 3. Nemec could do the same thing. Cooley could slip, although he shouldn't because that'd be ridiculous. Savoy will likely go somewhere around your guys' pick to the Buffalo range. Like the usual names you expect are going to go up there. They'll just like up and down 2 or 3 spots maybe, but that's where they're going to go. And then around your second pick is when chaos is just going to break out, because I have no clue. I have never heard, and I don't want to say this like it's a credible fact, so grain of salt this, but I do trust the people who tell me these things. I have never heard of so many separate NHL scouts having so many different players listed as top 10 guys. There are so many. I have a few that stick out where I'm just like, I've opened my list a few times. I'm like, I am going to get shit for this when it comes out. And it's what it is. And I've seen other times where I'm just like, this draft is just going to be chaos. And the best possible way is going to be chaos.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like, the Blue Jackets had a ton of first round picks in the past 2 drafts. And like, sure, if we get crazy with the 12th overall pick in this year's draft, I'm like, sure, let's do it. Let's draft some, I don't know, let's draft Lane Hudson, for example.
Oh,
let's do it.
Literally writing out the final version of my last piece for McKeen's. That's what I was doing before we started this. It's on Hudson. I'm adding the finishing touches before doing the video segment, finalizing it all tonight. Lane Hudson goes to the Columbus Blue Jackets at 12. I will literally scream at the top of my lungs in the draft. I will scream so loud that the building will like quake or something. And no Montreal fan will be able to understand why, because I'm going to be wearing a Habs jersey most likely. Right. What the hell? But
just very passionate about.
I think it would be so surprising as well, just because it's like, of all teams, Columbus. I do not think Columbus is one of the 16 that are in on Hudson.
No, I also don't. But like, it was the first like name that
he's
popped
just
into my
so
head.
fun.
I was like, you know what, like, and if it happens, you heard it here first, guys.
There are so many tangible reasons why Lane Hudson will likely not make the NHL. There's so many good reasons and so many good methodologies I've heard from people explaining the problems. And there's a little, he's got mechanical flaws in his skating, and at his size, that's just like, that's a like, it has to be fixed. This is a non-discussion. Like, if it's not fixed, it just doesn't work. And I don't care about any of it. I don't care. I am taking him high because The brain on this kid is unreal. Some people doubt him for his, or some people doubt his intelligence and say he's a little too over-reliant on skill and the like. I see a 5'8" defender who spent his whole life as the smallest guy on the rink without a significant speed advantage, which is rare, who has studied the game to such an extent that he knows everything that he needs to know and is just let's put it this way. He knows that when he gets to college, his little arsenal of tricks he's a little over reliant on right now is not going to work. He's already, but the brain's going to be like, that's fine. I'll just need to adjust. Like, he's already probably working out how to fix this. He's just brilliant. Like, I don't want to go into details and like back that statement up right now, because then we'll never get to Michkov, and you'll discover that this was a Lane Hudson episode by accident. But just look out for something from McKeen's in the next few days, I guess. That'll be about that.
And yeah, Lane Hudson, 12th overall. You heard it here first. Guys. And that's all I've got for you today. Tomorrow, we are going to be talking about another draft prospect. We're going to be talking about Pavel Minchikov, who is the player that I selected in the Locked On mock draft, 12th overall. So we're going to be talking a lot about him tomorrow. Super excited. That'll be our last draft profile before the draft happens. And then who knows what's going to happen in the draft. But we will have reactions, we'll have breakdowns of the analytic and the emotional kind, probably, and all sorts of things. So that's all going to be up on Locked On Blue Jackets later this week. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find this podcast at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets, free and available on all podcast platforms, also over on YouTube. And tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.